Hi, welcome to RCKicks. On today's show, well, I've got something new to show you that's joining a collection, and it's this all the way back from 1992. It's the LXT from Team Losi. It's a racing monster truck, and this one's in box art. Super chuffed to add this one. Now, I have been trying to add Team Losi vintage stuff to the collection. Yeah, I opened that can of worms, and in the UK, it's a lot harder than you think. I wanted to get from the JRX all the way up to the 22 2.0. Turns out that's a lot harder than you think. Now, I've been doing the same sort of thing with my Team Associated RC10s, and I basically went all the way from the Gold Pan to the B4. So I thought I'd do the same for Team Losi. Yeah, turns out in the UK, much harder. But I do have this one, and yes, I seem to be getting into the trucks as well. The only problem with the trucks is they don't go on the shelves properly. Now, I did quite recently add an RC10 T2 to the collection that was gifted to the show. Right, the one that I've got done in box art. This is not an original body, this is aftermarket, but it's done in a pretty decent kind of livery. It's all looking pretty much as it should be. It's done some work. It's not sort of shelf queen. It has been driven. There is a few things that are not quite right with it. But before we go into this version, let's do a little bit of a background on it. Now, the JRX T came out in 1989, then the Junior T came out in 1991, then the LXT came out in 1992, and then the XXT came out in 1994, and the GTX came out in 1995. Now, it shared a lot of its parts, including the chassis and the gearbox and everything, with the JRX Pro SE buggy. So there's a few things that I'm not sure whether this is actually a chassis from this car or a later version of it, because the actual servo hole is in this. Now, I'm not sure if that's just been cut out. Getting to the bottom of these is quite tricky, as there's lots of little changes that happened as they released them. Seems to be a thing with American cars. There's a lot of history, and as they evolve things and they change things, they don't tend to just release one thing and it's stuck like that. And that is basically what's happened with this. With the gearbox, when it came out, Team Losi wanted to produce a Hydra drive, which I'll go into in a bit more details in a bit, but it wasn't ready when the LXT came out. Now, this one has that fitted to it as an option. I couldn't really find out whether the first ones just came with a slipper and then the later ones had the Hydra drive, or whether it was always an optional extra that you had to add. I think it's that one, I'm not sure. Now, the Hydra drive system was a really clever bit of technology that Team Losi created to smooth out the bumps and deal with really rough terrain. The idea was that you had a slipper and then you had this Hydra drive, and apparently from what I can see, it's like a disc that has little paddles in it, and you fill it with oil, and then as the motor turned, it would smooth things out because it would have to push the paddles through the oil. I've never dismantled one, I've never had one before, but it's cool to actually have one in this. Now, there is a few things that are not quite right with it. The rims are correct, but they're the wrong colour. Not sure what these come from. If you know, comment below, let me know. Everything I kind of looked up from the history point of view, they tend to be yellow. So I may end up dyeing these yellow, or I'll just keep an eye out for them. The discs that are in these look brand new as well. So they are supposed to be painted red, I think it is. So I'll probably do that down the line as well. Right, let's open it up and look inside. So the truck looks to be in pretty decent condition. I will pick up some aftermarket decals again just to change them up a little bit. These are a bit worse for wear. There was pen mark all around the windows, which I've removed. I will edge it properly, but I'm quite happy with the body. Whoever painted this up did a pretty decent job of it. Now, the chassis itself, obviously, like I've mentioned, has been used, but it's looking pretty good. It doesn't look like it's been messed with too much. Now, things that are not quite right from the off is the actual springs have been changed from the kit ones. So we'll keep an eye out to see if I can put the correct ones back. They should be red on both front and rear. The back ones don't seem to be too correct because of the way that they're compressed to make it sit level, but the shocks are all working pretty much as it should do. Now, it did come with some electronics and some that I fitted. It did actually come with this Novatech ESC, even though it's got a Tamiya connector on it, which is strange. So I will leave that in there, but I've added the Novatech receiver just to match it up. Now, the actual way that this connects in is not quite right. This is a Novatech receiver that's slightly older, I think, so it needs the actual pin-in versions, not the kind of standard one that we know today, but it looks the part, so I'm quite happy with that. Also, he came with some Orion cells, so I really like that. It looks really cool. The actual brace along here does tend to break on quite a few, so that one looks to be in good condition. I fitted a vintage servo in it. It didn't come with a servo, so now it has one as it should do, and now the steering works as well. The towers and everything look to be correct. The arms are in pretty decent condition as well, even though I have seen replacement ones available front and rear. The tyres are incorrect. There should be spikes on the rear, and the front should be like this but slightly higher. These look like they're from a later version. Getting hold of rear tyres for this is going to be impossible. It's difficult in America, let alone over here. I don't mind these tyres, they're okay. I'm chuffed that I've got the correct wheels ish. You know, I've got the actual polycarbonate bits on them because I can paint them, so I can make them look a bit better as well. But whether I'll ever be able to get hold of original tires, probably not. And being that Team Losi likes to make things in miniature these days, it's a real shame that we just can't get hold of these kits. Again, there's no re-re's. Hopefully they might change their mind when they realise how much money they're missing out on. Some things that are also weird on this one, apart from, like I touched on before, that the actual servo horn hole is being cut into this. There's 2 drill marks, drilled holes in the chassis. Now, I'm guessing that was done because when all the dirt flies up inside, it gets stuck in these areas here, so drilling them out means it all falls out, and that probably was done at the same time as cutting out the servo horn, so that when all the dust gets in here, it doesn't lock up the steering. That's my guess anyway. Bit of a shame. I mean, they were drilled in properly, so I would like to try and get hold of a new chassis if I could, maybe one that's in a little bit better condition, but I'll keep an eye on it and see what comes up. The actual Hydro Drive that was installed in it as an option or extra. Also, not only the Hydro Drive was an option, you could actually get an upgraded transmission for it as well that was from the XXX. So you had a few options. You could go with the stock one, you could then upgrade the transmission itself to the more modern one, and you could add the Hydro Drive system as well. This come with a brushed motor, nothing special as far as I know. I haven't really looked into it too much, but really interested to play around with the Hydro Drive a little bit. I will at some point take the wheel off and have a look at this. There's no pinion in it at the moment, so that's why I can't tell how smooth it is or anything. It's just freewheeling, but that's something I will actually play around with off camera at some point. Now, this probably won't be back on the show. It will just go into the collection and I'll tinker with it and slowly add bits and pieces as they come up. Now, one thing that's really nice to see is the turnbuckles and everything. They have all the foam parts on them, which is a good sign that it hasn't been messed with too much. The shocks, like I said, is all feels pretty good. So there you go. That's another Team Losi that comes to the RCKicks channel.